What is going on, guys? Welcome back. Commentary for you. Jimmy just sighed. I was fighting back a yawn. So we're here to break down the main event. And I feel like a parent. Like, I'm not mad, right? I'm not mad. I know these two guys. Just say it.
Disappointed.
Disappointed.
Yeah.
I listen, I know, and you know all too well what goes into a fight camp. The hard work, the determination, the blood, the sweat. Everybody gives, right? And that's what makes a performance like this harder to watch. Because if you go back and you listen to the pre-show, we talked about it. Both of these guys had so much on the line. You know, Jan had an opportunity to really cement a win over a legend in the sport. Jacare had the ability to come in and really set the tone for a weight change. And I feel like I'm talking about it with more enthusiasm than I saw pan out. And it just seemed like in the beginning of the fight, right? I was really, you ever get into a fight, you're watching it and you're trying to rationalize a slow, laborious pace to yourself. I thought to myself, I bet Jan is just waiting for the Jacare fade. So he's not being real aggressive. He's not taking advantage of opportunities. Maybe he was kind of just stalling a little bit. But that never actually happened. I actually thought Jacare won the first two, maybe the first three rounds, because he was controlling center. He was kind of letting his threat of a takedown dictate the pace of the fight.
And so that's the difficulty. I thought the same thing you did. I thought Jacare, as bad as it was, probably won the first two rounds. And yeah, I was seeing the same thing. All right, Blachowicz knows how dangerous Jacare can be. He's kind of big manning him, waiting for him to wear down a little bit, lean on him. And then you do something, right? And we kept waiting, or at least I was waiting, I don't know how you felt about it, for maybe that other shoe to drop. And it never, ever happened. Now, the one thing that you cannot get away from when it comes to MMA or sports, period, we are in the entertainment business. You could be doing something else tonight, but you're watching Jacare and Jan Blachowicz because you believe they are entertaining. I'm not watching West Coast college football because I'm watching this. Do you want to see either one of these fighters fight again? That's my question to you.
Jimmy, beautiful segue. I mean, you could not have done me a better segue, because while that was going on, we have a
By the
partner.
way, we don't plan these. We don't plan these. So that segue was completely unintentional. It was just what I was thinking.
But watch the magic that works with this product, with this program. While I was watching that, because of the beautiful partner we have, one of the best partners we could have with Fight TV, I was watching Lobov versus Night 2. I was watching Felony Charles Bennett. I was watching Chase Sherman. And it's hard to watch two things at once, but, you know, I'm right there with you, Jimmy. I kept waiting for Jan to push the pace and someone in his corner say, hey, listen, you've stalled enough. You might be down 3 rounds. You're in his country. Let's go for broke. 1 round, 2 rounds, whatever the case may be, and then we see that his foot is injured. Now, you can kind of go both ways with an injury. It can either really, put blood in the water for you and say, okay, I've got to go where I might not be able to go, or it can make you ultra defensive because you're trying to clam up because you're hurt and you don't want to get hurt worse, or let him know how hurt you are. So when the 4th round kind of just went slow paced, and from what I heard, I didn't listen to this obviously, but I heard the crowd reaction was very negative. But in the 5th round, I could have swore that Jan would go for broke no matter what. The pace of this fight was just awful to watch. There was a time in the 5th where Jacare seemed like he either slipped or went down, and I thought at that point Jan surely was going to try to capitalize, and he just stood there and let him get back up. I think this is going to be a fight where both of them look back and see so many areas that either one of them could have won, could have changed it. And even though I feel like Jacare should have gotten the win, it just really did neither for either fighter. There's a lot of time and a lot of energy that went into this camp for both of them. And I guess to answer your question, it didn't do anything to raise either one of their stocks in a division that's pretty stacked to begin with.
They both lost. How often can you say that? We've seen wars, from the beginning of mixed martial arts, where you could say, oh man, both fighters won. Both fighters elevated their game. Both fighters did this. Both fighters lost this fight. It's one of those where you look at, Griffin Bonner and you're like, it's a shame somebody has to lose this fight. It's a shame somebody has to win this fight. It's a shame somebody at the end gets their hand raised. And the problem Jacare has is he was coming off a flat performance against Hermanson. He was the one that really needed to step on the gas and revitalize his career. Is this a step back for Blachowicz? Yeah, sure. I think it's a step backward for him in that if I'm Dana White, I don't want this guy anywhere near a title shot. I don't want him anywhere near an elite guy because maybe he beats that guy and derails somebody like a Dominic Reyes who's knocking guys out, right? Like a Johnny Walker who's fun. So his stock really went down, but Jacare, he had to win this fight. When we talk about the pressure on both guys, yeah, there was pressure on both of them. But I think Jacare was fighting for his promotional life and put in a terrible performance to where even if you'd won, would you want to see him in 205? Would anybody have walked out of this fight going, boy, I can't wait to see Jacare and see what he can do at 205? No, not at all. This was the first date with a supermodel. And you couldn't come up with something to talk about? You got diarrhea and ran to the bathroom every 2 minutes? It's like you really needed to be great. And it was awful. And it sucks for someone as talented as Jacare, for someone I like as much as Jacare, that I've really enjoyed watching as much as Jacare, to say, man, I really don't want to see him again after this. I really don't want to see him. Man, that hurts. It hurts to say, but it's true. He gave me no reason to watch him fight anymore in MMA with this performance.
All right, devil's advocate to a degree. I will say, I thought he filled out well for the weight class. Jan, generally a bigger 205 guy. I was impressed with how full Jacare looked. I didn't think that he was going to come in as equally sized. I will say he didn't fade during the whole fight, right? He didn't have that massive kind of drop off that we've seen. He shot for takedowns almost the whole fight. Used that well in terms of dictating pace. Jan, I think sometimes we often talk about how fighters can be too safe and have too much of a game plan. And perhaps you could look at a fight like this where both fighters came in with that. There's a lot on the line. I have to have a good impression. And you just never, ever put your foot down. This fight, at least for the first 3 rounds, and I mean, I'm going to dread going back to watch it, I really got the feeling it was like almost a sparring session that never, ever really got, like a soft sparring session too, and just never really got going. But, do you not feel that Jacare filled out well for the weight class? Do you not feel the gas tank was there the whole time? Because, I mean, those are 2 positives and 2 questions I had that seemingly did get answered.
But it's almost worse, right? That's how it feels to me when, we're not going to go over the whole card, but Hua Craig. I thought Craig was the much bigger fighter. And that kind of made Hua less offensive. It made him, I think, hesitate a little bit. He had a giant in front of him. Jacare didn't. I agree with you completely. Jacare looked like a nice, big, strong 205er. So why weren't you throwing? That almost makes it worse that he didn't look like the smaller guy. That it didn't look like he was intimidated by the size of Blachowicz. That he didn't run out of gas. It's like, okay, well then... Isn't that more tragic? That you turn in a performance like this when you had a decent gas tank and you weren't completely dwarfed. It wasn't David and Goliath. And yet you still have so many arrows left to shoot that you didn't shoot. Isn't that what I hate seeing when I was broadcasting or as a fan is that, God, I think this guy has more weapons and he's not using them. Can't take your punches home with you. Bullets you don't fire. A weapon that is not used is a useless weapon. And I felt like Jacare had that a bit tonight because, like you said, he didn't seem tired. He didn't seem small. He didn't seem intimidated. All these things that can happen when someone changes weight classes. And yet, to be nice, a subpar offensive performance by him.
Let me close this out because you mentioned earlier that a fight like this really impacts somebody's stock. And I completely agree. And, you know, obviously we had talked earlier, Jacare, to say he's at a crossroads would be an understatement. And the crossroad may be out of the UFC after a performance like this because you don't really have any other place to go. Does a performance like this impact him negatively looking out from another organization where even you said as a fan of this guy, certainly his name is always going to have recognition. Certainly people will always probably watch his fights. But does this not globally hurt him? Because you've, even in your hometown, well, your home country, you've really diminished the performance that people have kind of known you for. Do you feel like if he does have to look outside the UFC that maybe an organization like Bellator is going to look at a fight like this and say, well, do we really want to pay top dollar? Can we really try to, you know, hitch the wagon to this, so to speak? Because maybe after that, fans aren't going to be as excited to see him fight.
Wouldn't you say that in negotiation? Wouldn't that be your line? If you're Scott Coker, if you're ONE FC, if you, whoever you might be, when his manager sits down with you and you have the talk, isn't that your line? Well, look at your last one. You want X? How about Y? Right? You'd be a fool not to. Yeah. Yeah, you don't give the promotion a reason to devalue you. You don't give them an excuse to pay you less money. And that's exactly what this fight is. Whoever sits down at a table with Jacare's representation is going to go, well, I mean, the Blachowicz fight, you know, look at the Hermanson fight. You want top dollar? You want big money? Can't fight like that. So it's going to hurt him, period. End of. It hurts him as a fighter. Whether he stays in the UFC or goes elsewhere and never fights again, whatever choices he makes, this hurts him.
I would tend to agree, and it pains me to say that because if you go back and listen to the preview, you know, me and Jimmy, and genuinely, I have a lot of love in my heart and respect for Jacare. I don't know how someone's career ends. I hope him health, of course, but I just don't know, like you said, if I really want to continue to see him go down the path that he's going. So with that said, we will have a full breakdown, even though Jimmy kind of hinted in there, of this card coming up on the podcast. We appreciate you guys checking this out, and we will be back very shortly with more coming.